This video is about using Microsoft Word more efficiently. And as our example case, we're going to use the MELS program at Brandon University and writing the master's thesis and all of the formatting requirements required for that. It's highly recommended that you go to the Forms and Resources page at Brandon University's MELS website and download this document so that you can essentially read it firsthand and make sure that you're going through step by step. I'm not going to worry too much about some of the finer details such as page margins and things like that you can do on your own. I'm going to focus on using Word more efficiently. So I'm going to start with a document that I've already populated with some text just to save time. Reading that document that I just said, you'll see that you'll need to have a title page, a thesis approval page, an abstract, acknowledgement, table of contents, tables, or a list of tables and figures. Here is where the main body of the thesis starts at the introduction, and this is where we'll spend some of our time figuring out how to use headings in Word. And they're all revealed under this Styles tab here, which I have on my own tab, Pete's tab, on Styles. So I'm going to click on Styles. You'll just have to find it in your own version of Word. So click on Styles, and that opens up this over to the side. Now, introduction would be a level 1 heading, or a chapter heading, if you will. If you're going to do a manuscript style thesis, this will be a little bit different. I'll review that right at the end of this video, but in a traditional thesis, an introduction would be a chapter by itself. Same thing if you're writing sort of a field-based science, environmental science paper, then study site would be a level 1 heading, methods, results, discussion, conclusion, and references. Basically the sort of scientific, the standard scientific paper, if you will all be level 1 headings. Now, sort of as a virtual raise or showing of hands, if you wanted those to all be bold and numbered, how many people would probably have written 1 at the beginning of introduction and 2 at the beginning of study site? You're probably not alone. That would be doing it manually. And in Office, particularly Word, you don't want to do anything manually because it usually comes back to bite you in the butt later. So looking and formatting them as level 1, I'm just going to click on level 1, and we'll see that it's now changed everything to this ugly, bold, large blue, which I don't particularly like. So many people would want to start clicking around in these buttons and the font buttons to change it manually. Again, we don't want to do that. We want to come over to this little drop-down arrow and click Modify, and I'm going to change it back to black, and I'm going to change it back to 12, and I can keep the bold. Maybe 14. It's a chapter heading. That's probably fine. So bold, 14, and black. And if you wanted to change it to times, you could do that here as well. So I'm going to click OK, and you'll see that everything now has changed for me. I'm also going to highlight these ones as secondary headings, and I'm going to code those as level 2 headings. Again, the blue and the sort of anything default by Microsoft is usually not very good, so I'm going to default back to black, 12-point font, get rid of the bold, and make it italics, and click OK. Now, everything in your thesis needs to be numbered. So on the paragraph tab, we can click up here on the multi-level list, and I'm going to click on this one, which has all the headings as our multi-level list. And when I click here, all of my headings now number automatically. So if I were to add a new heading that needed to be level 1, I could highlight that, change it to level 1, and everything updates automatically for me. So I can get rid of that, and then study site will go back that way. So again, don't do things manually. If you don't like this font, you don't like it bold, modify it in here. And in fact, all of our level 1 headings should actually start on their own page. Now, a lot of people would probably say, okay, well, I can do that by, hitting enter a whole bunch of times and putting it onto the next page, which is a terrible way of doing it. You can see all of your sort of metadata on the page. I can tell if all you've done is hit the enter key, half a dozen times or whatever. So the other thing that you could do is actually hit Control Enter, which forces it onto a second page, Control Enter, essentially putting in a page break. But I'm actually going to show you an even better way. And again, that would be doing it manually. Is that in here, I'm going to go Modify, and I'm going to click on Format, and I'm going to click on the Paragraph tab down on the bottom corner. And need to do two things. Spacing before, I need to change to 0 on the Indents and Spacing tab. And then on the Line and Page Breaks tabs, I'm going to click Page Break Before. And I'm going to click OK. And I'm going to click OK. And now what you should see is that all of those chapters start on their own page by default. So no more page breaks, no more auto formatting mess ups when you add something in. Everything is on its own page. Now I'm going to cheat for these first pages using the Control Enter method just to put them all on their own page as well. Since this is the only place that you'll really do it, it's not really a big deal to do it. I just want to show you about the idea of page breaks in here. So this is what I'm saying about don't do anything manually, right? These page breaks are sort of a manual way of doing it, whereas modifying the style is not. When we're actually writing text of our thesis, so Canada has a lot of peatlands, then we'll note that this is now in Calibri and is single spaced and all of the things that we don't want it to be. So rather than edit it in here, I'm going to go into the normal template. I'm going to click Modify. I'm going to change it to double spaced, Times New Roman, and 12-point font, which is what's required at BU. And then I'm going to click OK. If you want the first line always indented, then you can go into here, click Modify, Format, Paragraph, Indents and Spacing, and you can say that the indentation is on the first line or none. It's up to you, I believe. I would read the guidelines very carefully to see if the first line has to be indented. I'm going to leave it not indented for now because it just makes it a bit tidier. So click OK. So don't do anything manually. Don't change things using commands up here. Do them in the Modify over to the side. Similarly, if I have a level 3 heading, I can just highlight it, change it to a level 3, and modify it as necessary. So I'm going to get rid of that because I don't want a level 3 heading. So let's look at inserting a figure into your diagram, into your thesis. We'll go into results, and I'll say here that I'm going to insert my figure somewhere in the results. Maybe I write a line of text showing, the weather was warmer than normal for the study year. And maybe that's referencing a figure. Now, many people would probably write, figure 1 like this, and that would be doing it manually. And so we're not going to do it like this. What we're going to do instead, I'll just leave it there for now, but I am going to go into Excel and just grab a figure that I've made, Control C to copy it, and then I'm going to dump it in here by right-clicking, and I'm going to paste special and just put it as a picture like this, so that it's broken from Excel. It helps to keep your file size down. So I'll scroll out a little bit so you can see it a little bit better. So for our picture, I'm going to click on the picture and I'm going to say Insert Caption. And I'm going to insert that caption. It's going to be label figure below. It's numbered. We'll talk about the numbering. Your thesis figures need to be numbered based on the chapter that they're in. So the first figure of chapter 4, in this case the results chapter, should be 4-1, which it has shown up here. So we can see that we've picked heading 1 there. We can change it to alphabetic or Roman numerals, but we need to stick with the Arabic numerals of 1, 2, 3, etc. So we're going to go OK, and there we go. And now we can write our caption, a simple x, y scatter plot of weather. It's clearly not of weather. And you'll note that it's the ugly blue again. So we can click on the caption, click modify, and get rid of the blue and turn it to black. There we go. So now we want to cross-reference this. So it's not actually figure 1, it's figure 4-1. So I'm going to get rid of all of this garbage. I'm going to say insert cross-reference. So here is the cross-reference. And I'm going to, from the reference type, select figure. And I want only the label and number. So insert reference to only label and number, and I'm going to insert my figure. Once you get 10 or 15 or 20 figures, then you'll have all of those figures listed through here, so you can click on the one that you want, and then you can say insert and click close. So now I can add the parentheses if I want. This is now linked to this, so that if I were to add a new figure in here, so let's say I just want to do a screen capture as a quick and easy way of doing a cheater figure. I'll say insert caption. So I now have figure 4-1 figure below. I can type my figure caption in here if I want. The numbering is all set. I click OK. So there. Now we'll see that this hasn't actually updated. This seems to be a weird quirk in Word, or for whatever reason it is, but all I'm going to do is highlight everything in the document, Control A. So I'm just going to highlight everything in the document and click F9. Now because I'm using screen recording software, when I click F9, the Camtasia pause comes up, which isn't useful for me. So normally that would have updated automatically. What I will do instead is click Update Field, and we can see that this is now updated, and this has updated itself. This will do it. This one will do automatically, but the in-text citations won't do it automatically. Okay, so let's say in the methods we need to maybe insert an equation. We should use the equation editor here. We need to think a few lines ahead when you're entering in an equation. Basically, it's just selecting everything that you want as you go. And you kind of build the equation as you go. And then you can fill in the values if you want afterwards. So whatever equation this might look like to you. And then you can kind of just keep on building it up and building it up. And then again, with this, we can insert a caption. Instead of the label being figure, it can be equation. And our numbering still needs to be there. So we're going to click numbering and say include chapter number and click OK. So now we have equation 3-1. Oh, I don't want it in the equation. I want it off there. So insert caption. There we go. Equation 3-1. And there we go. And so then we can manipulate this text so that we have it where we want and separated from our equation with some tabs so that it's off to the side of our equation or formulae, if you will. Now, if you're using a reference manager software, then we can insert a reference. So I'll click on the References tab and insert a citation. I have a whole video dedicated to this, so wherever you're watching this video, you can look and find that. So I'll say, what's a good reference for this? Yeah, wetland environment classification. And then we'll have the style as as Journal of Hydrology. So there we go. We have our references now. So now if I scroll down to the bottom to our reference list, I can come down below and I can say insert bibliography, and then all of my articles, anything that I've referenced above will show up here. The last thing that we need to do, or one of the last things that we need to do, is do the page numbers. So I'll go back up to the beginning. And what's interesting is that our main text needs to have Arabic, so the standard 1, 2, 3 numbers, but our formatter, the table of contents, list of tables and figures, abstract, things like that, all need to have Roman numerals. And you can check the the guide to figure out whether they're uppercase or lowercase. In our case, for the MELS program, is lowercase. And so we do that by having a section break. So I'm going to say on my tab here, I'm going to insert a break, and I'm going to call this a bit right here, and I'll say insert break, section break on the next page, right? So our section break ends there. So for our introduction area, I can go and insert page numbers. So if I go on to page, insert, sorry, I'm going to go page number, bottom of page, and in the middle of the page. That's our MELS requirement there. And so we'll see that our introduction is starting on page 7, which is not correct. That's not what we want. And so on here, we can go on to page number and format the page numbers. So over here on the header and footer tools, and I'm going to say we're going to start at 1. So there we go. That's good. Our introduction is on page 1. Now the problem is that these are not Roman numerals in this section. And so I'm going to click anywhere in this section, probably down here, and I'm going to say page number, format page number. I'm going to change to lowercase Roman numerals and click OK. And I'm going to click on the different first page for options, which will then get rid of it because I'm not allowed to have it on the title page. So now when I scroll down, this should show 2, that should show 3, 4, 5, 6, and then our introduction should still be page 1. I'll close this. So that's all good to go. And now with our table of contents here, I'll just, excuse me, below the table of contents, say insert table of contents on the captions tab, insert, oh no, sorry, it'll be page layout. Sorry, it's not on the page layout, it's on the references tab. I'll click table of contents, and my table of contents, you can kind of choose the one that you like. You can modify these heavily afterwards, but I'll just pick this. And what we'll see that it's done, it is now inserted our table of contents with all the page numbers for all of our references, or not our references, but references to the page, on what page they all are, just automatically, just without any typing. Sort of a virtual show of hands, how many people have typed a whole bunch of periods trying to get all the page numbers to line up, right? So as all of these things change, then these things update automatically. And that's the power of doing it this way, of using all the headers and the tools and everything like that, is that allows you to change everything universally or globally, right? If you discovered that you actually had your normal template on 1.5 spacing as opposed to double spacing, you can just go back into the modify and change it here, and anything tied to that style will update automatically. And that's really the power of doing this, and so that all of your text sort of has metadata, and that allows you to insert a table of contents very quickly and very easily. Happy thesis writing. So if you do happen to be writing a manuscript style thesis, then I'll show you how that will be formatted. You'll have your regular table of contents and stuff that I've omitted from this document, but the introduction will be chapter 1. The title of your first manuscript will be chapter 2, so that within that, basically everything that was a level 1 heading before is now a level 2 heading. So the introduction is a level 2 heading within chapter 2, so 2.2, and so on and so forth. Your second manuscript, which will be your third chapter, so you would, have a proper title here. This would be sort of unacceptable. just to call it manuscript 2. But again, you would have an introduction to study cited methods. Note that this says chapter summary. You're only allowed to have one abstract for the thesis, so you can't have an abstract within each. But you just can't call it an abstract. You'll have a conclusion within each manuscript, but then you will also have a conclusion for the thesis. And that's writing a manuscript style guidelines. On the forms and resources, there is a manuscript style thesis guideline document that you should become familiar with as well.